Hey guys, my name is Skylar and I'm the intern for HSM here at Eastside. I'm really excited to share with you all today because this series is so practical for our lives. Last week, we talked about communication, which is so important. Communication allows us to develop and maintain healthy relationships, which is what I'd like to talk about with you guys today. No matter who you are or what you do in life, relationships are something that you will have to navigate. Unfortunately, they are not always easy. Sometimes our relationships give us life and they can make us feel like we are loved and just so important. But sometimes they can feel a little bit more like this.
There's a sign at Ramsett Park that says do not drink the sprinkler water, so I made sun tea with it and now I have an infection. Sir? Sir, are you listening to me, sir? Sir, I'm talking to you! Sir, are you aware?
Now, whether you feel like that lady running around in circles trying to get through to someone, or more like Ron Swanson and want to just avoid dealing with drama or feeling uncomfortable, there is plenty of great advice out there that can help us feel comfortable with any relationships that we may have. Today, I'd like to focus on 3 types of relationships and provide you guys with some tips and advice for navigating through them that I have learned from scripture and from several pastors that I really respect. I want to start by talking about family. Family relationships can be some of the best relationships that we have, but they can also be complicated. I want to be clear that I do not think there's any one example of what a family looks like. We all come from different backgrounds, and your family most likely looks very different than someone else's. But no matter what your family looks like, God makes it clear that family is something that He cares deeply about. When our family relationships get difficult, it helps to remember this. We can't choose our family, but we can choose how we treat our family. Our family members know how to get under our skin like no one else. I remember whenever my brother and I would get into a fight growing up, my dad would tell us that we can choose to be best friends or worst enemies. Whenever he said this to my brother and I, we would look at each other and realize that whatever we were fighting about was not as important as our relationship. Now, most arguments and conflicts you have will not be solved as easily as that. But I think my dad's point was that most things that we could get angry or frustrated at each other about is ultimately not worth ruining the relationship over. Jesus had similar advice to His disciples. In Matthew 18:21 through 22, Peter asked Jesus a question about forgiveness. Listen to how Jesus responds. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times?" Jesus answered, "I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times." Now, back in those days, forgiving 3 times was considered generous. Peter pushed it up a notch to 7. But Jesus is not about the details. He cares about the heart. He pushes way past 3 or even 7 because He wants His followers to not let fights and blaming each other to come in between their love for each other. We need to be quick to forgive our brother and sister or our parents when they become frustrating to deal with, because ultimately the relationship is more important. And the reason that we can do this is because God has forgiven us first. Apart from abusive or unsafe family situations, we should seek to always reconcile with our family members and to forgive them when they make mistakes. This is what being a part of God's family is like. In Romans 8, we are called God's adoptive children. We were chosen by God to be in His family, and God always loves, protects, provides, and forgives His children. You are precious to Him. If that sounds like a family that you want to be a part of, then I encourage you to talk to your leader. God is welcoming you into His family with open arms. Now, the second type of relationship that I want to talk about is friends. On my 18th birthday, all of my friends forgot to wish me a happy birthday. My best friend at the time was even texting me the entire day and forgot that it was my birthday. To top it all off, the only person who actually remembered my birthday was my ex-girlfriend who had dumped me the month before. Yikes. Hopefully, you guys don't know what that particular yikes feels like, but I'm sure that many of us have also had friends that let us down at times. But what makes a good friend? What kind of qualities should we look for in a friend, and how can we be that for them? What standards should we have for friends, and how can we be that to our friends as well? I'd like to share just a few of the qualities and characteristics that I have found in some of my closest friends. The first one is a good friend cares. A good friend wants to hear your thoughts. They care about what you think. They'll care when you tell them exciting news. They'll care when you are going through something difficult. They'll want to hang out and catch up because they care about what's going on in your life. Being a good friend to someone means caring for them emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes even physically. Look for friends who care. A good friend is also encouraging. We all need encouragement in our lives. One of my favorite men in the Bible is a man named Barnabas. The book of Acts describes him in this way. When he arrived and saw what the grace of God had done, he was glad and encouraged them all to remain true to the Lord with all their hearts. He was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and a great number of people were brought to the Lord. Guys, we all need a Barnabas in our lives. We all need someone who will encourage us in this way. But we also need to be encouragers, just like Barnabas. Life is tough, and we can't do it alone. We need to be friends who remind us of God's love and want the best for those we care about. Look for friends who encourage you. And last, a good friend is not afraid to speak the truth to us. A good friend will call us out when we are in the wrong. It may not feel like a very kind thing to do in the moment. Who enjoys being wrong? But a friend who is willing to be honest with us is a good friend. Paul does this in Galatians when he confronts Peter about some hypocrisy over not eating with certain people groups. Take a look at this spicy remark Paul makes. When I saw that they were not acting in line with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas, which is Peter, in front of them all, "You are a Jew, yet you live like a Gentile and not like a Jew. How is it then that you force Gentiles to follow Jewish customs?" A good friend speaks the truth, but does so in love and respect. Look for friends who are honest with you. Now guys, the last type of relationship I want to talk about is dating relationships. But before I get too into the details, I want to make a few points about singleness first. I was in a season of singleness for most of high school and the majority of college. For a long time, I struggled with it. I didn't want to be single. I considered it a bad thing that I couldn't seem to find somebody else. But I had a wrong view of my singleness. Once I came to terms with it, I realized that singleness is not a bad thing, and in fact has many advantages. So before I talk about dating, I want to share some points about singleness that I learned during my season. First off, singleness is a season to embrace, not escape. I think a lot of us have this idea that singleness is not good and that we need to find somebody. We need to be in a relationship and that being single is somehow less than. But guys, that's just not true. In fact, singleness provides freedom to invest in friends and family. It gives us more free time, more availability, and less responsibility to care for our friends, to care for our families, and also to put time into bettering ourselves. Because singleness is a time to devote yourself to becoming the best version of yourself that you can be. I mean, working on homework, getting through classes, being a good student, exercising, developing habits that are going to stick with you for the rest of your life. This is the reality of singleness. If you do want to date, now is the time to be the person you are looking for is looking for. And I'll say that again. Now is the time to be the person you are looking for is looking for. Now, let me talk about dating. Before my girlfriend Sabrina and I began dating, I read through Pastor Ben Stewart's book about dating, as well as Pastor JP's book called Outdated. Both of them have really practical and wise advice about dating that I want to share with you all today because it has really helped me in my own relationship. The first point is why do we date? JP says in his book Outdated that we should be mindful of our intentions for dating. He makes a point that if we are not dating to get married, then we are essentially dating to break up. Whoa, that's pretty extreme, right? Well, no, actually. You see, dating has a purpose. One of my favorite pastors, Ben Stewart, states this: dating is not a status to dwell in, but a process to move through. It is a series of actions meant to lead us to a particular end, discerning whether or not we are meant to marry a particular person. Dating exists for evaluation. Now, something interesting is that the Bible doesn't say anything about dating. To God, there is a single person and there is a married person. Paul even says in 1 Corinthians 7:9 that if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. See, back then there were two options: stay single as a Pringle or get married. Two options. So if your goal in dating is not to evaluate whether or not you want to build a life with someone, then you have a different goal in mind. I know it may seem really extreme to be thinking about marriage at this age, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in being mindful of the motives you have in dating. We should think through our choices, especially when we can risk hurting people in the process. Having a clear purpose in dating can help clear up a lot of the awkwardness and insecurity that often comes with dating. Some questions you might ask are: does this person see a future with me? Is this person willing to go through the challenges that a relationship can bring? Is this person willing to work through conflict when it comes up? Are they dating me because it brings them some kind of status? Are they simply trying to avoid being lonely? Are they going to leave me when something better comes along? All these are good things to think through. So, if we are going to date, we need to know who we should date. Again, Pastor Stewart says that dating is a process of evaluation, which will help us to know who to date in a relationship. But what are we evaluating? That's a great question. We should be evaluating many things, but the main two things are character and chemistry. A person who has character is someone who is honest. They are someone who takes responsibility for their actions and seeks to improve themselves. They are someone who will admit when they're wrong and work to be better. Someone with character will be this way even when they are by themselves. They will treat you right because they treat everyone right. So as you evaluate those around you, aim high. Look for someone who displays good character. Someone who has good relationships with their friends, treats people with patience and kindness. And while you are looking for somebody like this, work to be somebody who has character. Now, the second thing we should be looking for is chemistry. When looking for chemistry, look for who you have fun with. Who do you enjoy being around? Who could you talk to about anything? Could you get deep with them? Who do you want to tell first when something crazy happens? Who has similar interests as you? Do you carry similar values about life or politics or family or work? Don't look for the perfect person because you won't find that person. Look for somebody who is compatible with you. Find someone who complements you, not completes you. So guys, I know we will all have difficult relationships to navigate in the future. There will be ups and there will be downs. They will get complicated and uncomfortable. Relationships can be hard to figure out, but that is okay if we are up for the challenge of figuring them out. God made us to be relational beings and has given us valuable lessons in His Word on how to handle different relationships. I hope that this advice can help you all in your future relationships as they have helped me in my own relationships. They're very tricky, but don't be afraid to reach out to adults or mentors for advice on situations. I know, especially in high school, it can often feel like nobody will understand what we're going through, but that is often just not true. I also encourage you guys to read those two books I mentioned earlier by pastors Ben Stewart and JP. Now guys, like Ron Swanson's confidence in a hardware store, all this advice and these great resources are tools in your tool belt to be able to handle the challenging relationships in our lives. Now, let's talk about this more in our discussion groups.